Awesome. So, Nick, for those who don't know you, give me a quick bio, quick background on your how you got started in this journey.
Ah, how far do we go back? Well, I'm a copywriter by training, so that's sort of my the day job, if you like. And I've been doing that quite a while, and I've worked in fintech as well as a copywriter, and then more recently in brokerage firms. But I got into trading during the COVID period, and that was I think it was mainly because I couldn't find enough copywriting work, and I had, like a lot of people, were at home thinking, what else could I do? Money's running out and all the rest of it. So I took a look at trading. I'd written some copy for Forex company called Learn to Trade. You might have heard of them, Greg
Hmm.
Secker's outfit. And I thought, well, I'll give it a go. And instead of just giving it a go, I dove straight in. Feet first, really. And like a lot of people, did quite well at the beginning and had a good run, and then the bad news happened and things blew up and what have you. But I stuck at it, and I find it totally fascinating. Really, it's just a sort of game of chess, and in many ways. And I was intrigued by both the fundamental side of things and the analysis, that you do as a trader.
Hmm.
And because I'd already started a podcast as a filmmaker, because I'm a filmmaker as well, and I was interviewing film directors and producers and so on. And I thought, well, how about I try it with trading? I mean, I enjoy talking to people, I enjoy drawing out their stories and what have you. I'll learn as well from doing this. So I started a trader podcast, thinking, oh, I'm hardly a trader, but I can I can pick it up as I go along. And my main thing was not, the nitty gritty. It was more about people's lives as traders, hence a trader's life. So I wanted really, as a storyteller, I wanted to draw out people's stories and how they got started, their ups and downs, their emotions, and how they brought those into check, at least the successful ones. So yeah, it was that's kind of the beginning, and it just went on from there.
Nice. Nice. I
Yeah.
know I know you have quite a roster of names that you've interviewed so far. How was it in the beginning? Was it difficult to get people on the show? How did you reach out to them? Tell me a little bit about how you
Yeah.
started.
Yeah, it was quite difficult, but I just reached out to people on LinkedIn to begin with. Then I would add people on Twitter, just keep adding anyone who's got trader in their bio. And of course, most are just sort of disappear, don't respond, whatever.
Hmm.
And then you get one or two, and it's really like a lot of businesses. You've got to get those first few before you start to
Sure.
gather any kind of momentum. You have to have something to show someone to say, look, I can actually do this. I'm not going to waste your time. Um, so then once you get one or two big traders on, then it's a little easier as well. So
Right. You've established
you,
some credibility. As far as you recall, who was your kind of first big name?
one of the big names I think would be Francis Hunt. I don't know if you've come
Sure.
across him. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
The sniper.
Yeah, well, he's great on macro. He's fascinating. I just love his YouTube videos. They're so in depth. I mean, it really feels like going to university for macroeconomics. I think I probably learn more listening to him in an hour than I would, a whole week or longer at some sort of economics course.
Absolutely.
It's
He was just with
it's
he was just on with Boris at Trader Fest, and he had some very interesting things to say about gold, kind of a contrarian view, and he's certainly fun to listen to. We hope to have him on as well at some point.
yeah, yeah. He's also very entertaining. Yeah, quite eccentric sometimes. Yeah, but yeah. So just a few names: Louise Bedford, a big trader in Australia; Serge Berger, who's also a fund manager. Um, who else? Yeah, just going running through the list. Give me one second. Todd Horowitz and Andy Hecht. Uh,
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, I don't want to bore you with the long
Yeah,
list.
no,
It's
no,
quite a
I
few, but
definitely, I would
yeah,
definitely encourage people to check out your interviews. They're great. You really are great at digging in and kind of getting to the meat of the story. So I've enjoyed them personally. So thank you again
great.
for joining us. So as you kind of got new traders on, and you were in your own trading journey as well, share with me some of the things that kind of happened for you. I'm sure you picked up little gems along the way, but how did these traders, talking to them day in day out, impact your journey?
Ah, yeah. Where do we start? It's a big subject, isn't it? I think if we just start with mindset, the best traders tend to emphasize the importance of slowing things down, not chasing things. You know, if you have a good run, just slow it down. Walk away from your win and say, "Hey, you know, that's cool." I it's very easy, isn't it, to have sit at the chart and you do well, you close out and you say, "Ah, there's another one over there. I'm going for that one." You know, we just get it, I wouldn't even call it greed. It's more like a sort of it's an adrenaline rush of the chase. It's
Excitement.
kind of yeah, it's the excitement, isn't it? You think I've done well here, I can do well again. It's just a natural human reaction to your own performance, isn't it? But of course, that comes with a risk. And I mean, the market is risky to begin with. But what you're risking by doing that is you're starting to lose focus. Really, it's becoming more a wish fulfillment thing than anything else. You know, so I think that's a really important thing. And I even after 3 years of doing this, I I still have to tell myself sometimes even out loud. You know, I walk around the apartment saying, "Just slow down, just slow down."
Hmm.
And I think that's no harm in doing that because you're on your own. Well, most traders are, unless we're in a trader room, you know.
Sure.
But you know, most of us are at home or what have you, and you actually do need to say these things out loud. Maybe some people prefer to look back at their journal and be really specific about it and say, "Well, at this point, let's not do it again." Yeah, but I think that's a big one
Got it.
to
No,
withdraw. Yeah.
definitely. And, I've been with traders for many years now, coming up on 16, 17 years. And there's like you said, the successful traders have a handful of attributes that, they shout from the rooftops. And new traders don't like these. They're not sexy. They're not fun, but it's really part of the things behind the scenes that make them successful. Some of the things you mentioned, journaling, mindset, having a trading plan. Tell me about those items and how important are they?
Yeah, I think they are. The journaling helps. There is something about committing to writing something down that actually enables you to memorize it better and learn it better. It's also develops a sort of discipline, which you naturally need anyway to be a good trader. There's a risk, of course, that you know you start to treat it like a toy in a casino. You know, just another one, another one. So by writing it down, again it goes back to that sort of slowing things down. You're introducing a process, and the process forces you to be more analytical, more cool about what you're doing, and perhaps do fewer of what you want to do. You know, that kind of thing.
Right.
So that's good. I mean, in terms of me for a strategy, I've mostly begun to incorporate the ICT approach, which is very much looking for pools of liquidity and
Hmm.
imbalance in the market. Um, but I, unlike Michael, who teaches it, the ICT guy, I will also sometimes use the cross, you know, the EMA cross, perhaps like a. I tend to look out for the 50 crossing the 200, for example. Um, that's often a really good signal.
Hmm.
So I will support a resistance, but rather more in the way Michael teaches it in terms of pools of liquidity and where things are drawn to and the fair value gap. So the fair value gap being some kind of imbalance where something's moved too quickly, either to the upside or the downside.
Right.
And so you're expecting the market to pull back to those points because they haven't really there's an imbalance there because the transactions have not gone through efficiently.
Well,
So
let
you're
me
looking for that
a
kind
little
of
bit
yeah.
about ICT because we've had traders on who love it. We've had traders on who don't believe the method. I'm sure you've spoken to many traders on both sides. Where do you fall on it, and where do you think the value is there?
Yeah, I think it's a very good way to study the market, and I think it enables you to look at what's going on in terms not just of support and resistance, which is the typical, it's your basic kind of analysis, isn't
Right.
it? And to see price as having some kind of objective, or the market, should we say, pushing price in one direction or another. And I find it helps to think of less support and resistance, which is it doesn't really, for me, give a picture of uh, any kind of objective. Whereas if I'm thinking of liquidity, I think, right, well, according to Michael, it's all about algos, algos pushing the market to a certain point where they're going to find more liquidity. So it goes to that idea of smart trading, that you buy in order really to sell, and vice versa. And so I think that side of it is really helpful because it gives you something to work with, a sort of structure. But on the other hand, you have to be really careful using his strategy, not to think that, right, well, there's a fair value gap down there, the market's going to come down. And it might come down, but like tomorrow, and in the
Right.
meantime you're blown out. I mean, that can easily happen. So, but I think, in all fairness to Michael, he wouldn't say, yeah, it's just going to come down when you want it to come down. The point is to be aware of those points. Those points, those fair value gaps, those imbalances won't always be cleared that day or even that week, but be aware of them. And of course, you've got different time frames. So he talks about imbalances it right across, right from the monthly down to the 5 minute. And I think to be aware of all those sort of what would you call them, kind of zones in a way, on
Hmm.
on your chart is really helpful, and it gives you a sense of where things want to move or could move in a better way than just support and resistance, which for me is a little bit dull and sort of, I don't get a sense of a goal, if that makes sense,
I
or
understand.
what
So the
what
kind
what
of
the market is trying to do.
the what behind the why is what helps with
Yeah,
ICT.
kind of. Yeah.
Now, over all the years you've talked to traders, and I'm sure they all have different strategies, and many of them have started on one and ended up with another one. Do you get a feel for what strategy is kind of, the most successful for different traders?
Uh, well, for instance, Mark Shaw's a really good trader I interviewed, and I've interviewed him twice. He's really big on patterns, in a much on a higher time frames. Really, he's looking at days and weeklies and so on. And I think patterns are very important, but they can be broken. Those patterns, they're
Sure.
the typical, like the head and shoulders and what have you. Um, and of course, trading on those high time frames is not very good for somebody with a small account, for example. So I think, again, you have to take that into account. And what are you trading? How big is your account? How much time do you have to spend in front of your screen, for example? Uh, Increasingly, I want to back away from the screen a bit because
Right, of course. Yeah.
it's
It
like
becomes
it can eat
more
you
than a
up.
full-time job. Yeah,
Yeah, and I
absolutely.
I already do a few other jobs, so I'm burning the candle at both ends, but and I think it's kind of healthier existence, to perhaps be swing trading or even position trading, but
I've spoken with traders who reference protecting their psychology, which I always think is a very neat concept. So not just the psychology of trading, but for some people, a shorter time frame is better for them. For some people, a longer time frame. So finding out what works for you and sticking with it, so you don't get stressed out at the charts, which sounds kind of like goes back to your slowing it down thing. So maybe that's different for different people, but not to get out of your own specific comfort zone so much.
yeah. And I'm somewhat torn by following other traders and what have you, because I've followed a lot of really successful traders and their signals and what have you, and then it's just lost me money, and I'm thinking, what the hell? These guys have been in the business way longer than me, and they're getting it 40, 50%. Well, that's trading, but
Right,
I
of
do
course.
think I do these days. I prefer someone to teach me how to fish rather than, hey, Nick, there's a fish in that pool. you know,
Right.
it's it. I think because not only is it important to educate yourself really well, I think it's important to develop your own making process. And when you take on other people's ideas, signals and what have you, it can get really chaotic, and you're not necessarily understanding the strategy in any kind of continuity. It'll be somebody's strategy here and somebody else's there, and somebody's using a bot over there, and I don't know how you can properly develop a consistent strategy for what you want to do for your time, as you said, and the kind of assets you feel more comfortable with. I mean, I'm myself am more gravitating to the indices than I not long ago I actually looked back and said, where are my big losses and where are my better trades? And on the whole, they tend to be in the indices. And every now and then I'll go and do something stupid and try and trade natural gas, and
Right.
it's like, yeah, not a good
Right, of
idea, man.
course. Uh-huh.
Yeah, right. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Do you have any standout stories that really stood out to you from different traders? Maybe one or two stories that were just wow, out of this world.
Well, yeah. This is a funny one, or a horrific one, actually. A trader who I asked him, "How did you get into trading?" And I never thought I'd ever hear this as an answer, but he was working as a builder, and he went to work one day early in the morning, and he put some petrol in the tank, gas as you call it. Then went to an ATM, and as he was walking over there, he saw somebody already at the ATM and another guy coming up to him. He looked a bit like a sort of hobo, homeless type. And he seemed to be best pestering this guy who was trying to take money out of the machine. He drifted away. Then my trader friend came up to the machine and started to put in his number and what have you. And this guy came back and looked over his shoulder and said, "That machine, there's something wrong with that machine. They've taken my money. And I think you've just taken out my money." And he just said, "No, it's not that. You got it wrong. If you've got a problem with the machine's taking your money, just go maybe next door and see if they can help you. But that's my money. I just put in my PIN number and this is my money." Anyway, he walked off and the guy kept following him and he kept insisting, "That's my money you've got." And then all of a sudden, this guy white swipe gets out this knife, like 8 inches, and plunges it into his chest.
Wow.
And there's all this blood gushing out like this, like like a tap, like a sort of real horror movie. He staggers off, somehow manages to get away, and the homeless guy's having another go at him with this knife. And fortunately, my trader friend manages to push him away, staggers off, tries to get some help at a house next door. She's terrified because she sees all this blood. He's now soaking in blood, and he collapses to his knees. And fortunately, somebody drives along and points down the window and says, "Hey, fella, you all right there? Oh, somebody stabbed me." And he's beginning to really nearly pass out at this point. He's very weak. And the guy, luckily, gets out and gets an ambulance really quickly. And he's saved. And during his convalescence, because he couldn't do any building, anything else really, he was sitting there in the hospital, he started to take an interest in trading. He just started on a demo and what have you, and then began to develop a passion for it. And that's how he transitioned from being builder to trader. So that was
Wow.
extraordinary, and he told it better than
Wow.
I did. But it's
Sure,
like,
of course.
so you get when you
Harrowing
get
story.
stories like that, yeah, when you get stories like that, they're quite impressive and shocking, really,
You
obviously.
know, I've
But
I've heard that over the years. A guy gets in a car wreck or a motorcycle wreck. His leg is broken. He can't get out of bed. What does he do? He pulls up charts on his phone and takes a dabble at it. And sometimes it works out well. Sometimes it doesn't.
yeah, yeah,
Tell me about what your assessment is of personality type. You've spoken to a lot of traders. Do you
yeah.
see any personality traits or personality types that seem to have a more or less of an affinity for trading?
Yes, possibly. I think one common thing is that they're quite resilient as people. They're quite tough. They're the sorts of people who, in life generally, you knock them down, they'll get up again. They are really tough, and I think that is you've really got to have that because no matter how smart you are, you're going to have some gruesome days,
Right,
and
absolutely.
you're going to have all that adrenaline and that worry, and sometimes you've perhaps traded family members' money, and it's then you've got the shame on top of it. So you've somehow got to have enough resource within yourself, a kind of a mixture of grit and optimism to get through those
Hmm.
bad days, at least. I don't know about anything else. I mean, I've interviewed some traders who are quite, even now, even after many years of trading, quite impulsive, and admit to being that. And they make mistakes, even though stupid mistakes. That almost rookie mistakes. And then there are those who are sort of calmer, and you think, well, yeah, you're probably. I think a lot of people do have this impression that the stay-at-home traders who do well are sort of really calm and just have this sort of ability to control their emotions, and that can be true as well. But uh, what I uh, what I have found is the stereotype as presented to us in Wall Street and films like that doesn't at least come onto my show. I mean, all this kind of yeah, done it. I think that maybe that was the 80s or something. With that
Right, right.
that kind of that a thing. But I mean, if you're the kind of trader who goes yeah every time you win a trade or even a big trade, next week you're going to blow it. It's just
Right.
so I do think you do need to have some of that kind of ability to cut off that euphoria, but also just go, I lost a trade. You've somehow got to find that balance. And I think most traders I speak to agree that's where you should be aiming for. We can't always achieve it, but you know,
Awesome. That's
we
that's a
got
great answer.
I
Yeah,
hope so.
that's a great
But
answer. You're right there. The rah rah rah. Those people tend to have very highs and lows, and the successful traders that I found are much flatter when it comes to their
yeah,
emotions.
interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But I think, also there is the trader who works at an institution who gets paid anyway. I mean, he might get fired for blowing 6 million, but he hasn't personally lost 6 million.
Right,
Uh,
right. Of course.
so they get a salary at the end of the day. If we blow even, 5 grand, that's a real damaging number for most of us
Sure.
anyway,
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's a lot worse, you get ticking off by your boss if you lose 1 million or whatever. I know
Yeah,
JP
of
Morgan,
course.
it's like, okay.
Totally different mindset. That's it's kind of what I want to come to in a few minutes here is how prop affects people's mindset. But first, let's chat a little bit about the timeline it takes most traders to become successful. Years ago, it was a very long time. Maybe 3, 4, 5 years of not profitable, and then they have some turning point, and then they're on a track to being profitable. Share with me a little bit about what you've learned on that scope.
Yeah. I I find most traders need at least 2 years. At least 2 years. And that's usually the sort of break even year. Coming into the third year. So you've done 2 years, you're up and down, and so on. And then you come into the third year and you're sort of mostly flat. You have good weeks and then really awful ones, and so on. But I've spoken to quite a few traders who've taken 4, 5, 6 years. It's not uncommon. One of the traders, I mean, like Mark, he was trading professionally for a very long time before he made the big money he's making now. So he was trading many years. So I think we shouldn't get too worked up about what other people do. I think it can actually be damaging. I think
Sure.
you have to go at your own speed and don't run yourself down if you're taking 4 years or 5 years. If it's still fascinating, if it still grips you, even to be making some money, there's no shame in that. And I think
Right.
it's important to because at the end of the day, it could really make you unhealthy and you get depressed at the end of it because you think, oh, I'm not doing what these guys are doing, and they're making all this money, I'm not. Everyone has his own circumstances, his own journey, and don't
Sure.
judge yourself too much, I think. Yeah.
What do they say? Comparison is the thief of joy.
Well, yeah,
Holds
very
true
true.
there for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So let's take a moment and jump over to prop. I know you've been doing this for a while. I don't know if you started in prop, but it's kind of really come into its own. And right now, it's the hottest thing out there. Tell me where you kind of saw things change from trading your own account to going prop from traders you speak with.
Well, for me, I've done the challenges at SurgeTrader. I've done, gosh, 5 or 6, and nearly passed twice. so, and I think I was defeated by a phone call or something like that. It's the problem of trading when you haven't got your eye on the screen all the
Sure, of
time.
course.
And anyway, so I found I started the process by the usual thing, running reviews on different companies, looking at their conditions, their rules, and what have you. I thought SurgeTrader looked great, and I thought the rules were less onerous than many, and I thought I could just about work with that. And I haven't quite got there yet. Came very close, but many people take 10, 12 goes at it before
Sure.
they pass. Right? I think it's a great exercise in making you a more disciplined trader, because I think any way you need that, even if you're still running your personal account alongside the Surge Trade account, as I was doing, I think it helps you be more disciplined on, especially on the risk management side of things. Um, and because the rules are quite tight, that it also encourages you to, should we say, slow down and think twice about
Sure. Have a
taking
trading
on another
plan.
trade. Have a trading plan. Bring your trading size down. If you've got, say, 3 lots on, you're getting pretty close to possibly blowing things, and unless you got very tight stops. I prefer trading with wider stops. So if I'm going to trade with those wider stops, then just be careful of the trade size. So
Right.
it's a bit like that. It depends on your style. Some people like really tight stops. They don't mind getting stopped out 20 times a day. I don't like
Sure.
it, but
Sure.
but you know,
Now, would you say you've spoken to more people recently who have gone the prop route, who are currently trading prop?
in terms of traders I've interviewed, not so much. No, they're pretty established with their own thing. Uh, but I was talking to somebody, interesting enough, who trades and runs his own prop firm, and so that was quite interesting to hear how he set that up and so on, and the kind of innovations he's hoping to introduce, and the discussion generally about the industry as it's growing, and lots of prop firms are now, shall we say, relaxing some of the rules a little bit, and they have to, because the competition is getting fiercer, and more people
Right.
are getting in there saying, "Oh, I can play with 50 grand, 100 grand." Instead of losing, you know, 2K, 3K, 4K when I make a mistake, I lose my audition fee. You know,
Right. Right.
kind of a
Definitely.
no-brainer. In terms of just managing your expenses for the month. You say to yourself, "Right, I'll give this a go for this month. If I blow it this month, okay, so I lost $250 or $500, whatever it is, but that's it. And so next month when the salary comes in, I try that again. But at least you can, budget for your trading
Right, right.
ambition.
It kind of changes your whole risk profile. You're no
Yeah,
longer subject to market risk. You're really just subject to that risk of that audition fee. So it really changes
yeah.
things for people. How does that change your mindset when you're taking a trade?
I am even more conscious of risk management than on my own personal account, which is kind of a contradiction if you think about it. You should be more protective of your own personal account. But I think it's because it's a little bit more akin to working for someone, because you've got rules that are set by
Hmm.
somebody else, right? If it's your personal account, unless you've got absolute iron discipline, you will occasionally make allowances or break those rules, or bend them. Whereas on the prop firm, you're not going to be able to do that. On that platform, you got to
Right,
stick to
right.
those rules. Yeah.
So those
So
guide rails that are already established for traders, a lot of times it's going to give somebody who maybe doesn't have good risk management or discipline, it's going to force them into a mold that requires them to.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah,
Kind of
yeah.
shorten the learning curve even.
It could do, couldn't it? It could do. Yeah, yeah.
How much would you say, we talked about the psychology, we talked about kind of all the things off the charts, right? So you have you develop a trading strategy or somebody gives you a trading strategy. What percentage would you say, success is based on the strategy versus those non-tangibles, the off the chart type stuff, journaling, risk management, trading plan?
Well, yeah. I would say it's mostly down to your strategy. But for me, the risk management is somewhat combined. It's not to have strategy without some sort of risk management would seem bonkers, really. But
Right.
uh, so those two are important, or I suppose equally. But I,
Okay.
I think going back to the strategy purely, I think if you've got a really good strategy and you don't go in too big with your trade size, you've got more room for drawdown, and it should come good. So risk management is less critical, shall we say, than if you're bringing that stop loss quite tight.
Right.
Um,
You've spoken to
yeah.
a lot of traders who, some of them innovators, some of them kind of been around for a very long time. Do you get any feel for what trading looks like in 3 to 5 years?
Well, yeah. I mean, this year we've had AI explode like never before, and I think lots of trading outfits are jumping on that opportunity and offering various AI to help you trade better. And I do think that's going to be a huge thing. I really do think most people who start trading will now be looking at AI. My experience of uh, AI, I don't know if we can call it AI, but I was trading right at the beginning using a bot,
Hmm.
and that was that just chewed up my account. So I was really put off the whole idea of just leaving a bot to do the trades for
Right.
me.
Right.
Um, and I haven't gone back to any of those kinds of things since then. But I am actually looking at AI now as a means to, well, at least give it another go. But I think,
Sure.
back to your question, 2 to 3 years, this is going to accelerate exponentially, isn't it?
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought up AI. It's such a relevant topic at the moment. Is there anything outside of your trading life that you're using AI for that you didn't previously?
Not yet. Chat GBT and all that. No, I haven't. My kids have a little bit. They just tap in some random question to.
They're not doing homework anymore.
Well, no, my kids are all grown up. They're not on homework anymore. But yeah. Uh, as a copywriter, you sort of I'm sometimes sent scripts now done by Chat GBT, and it's
Interesting.
like, Nick, can you just improve this, make it a little bit more, you know, with personality and what have you. But it's kind of a bit worrying, really, because you realize
Sure,
that
I can
at,
imagine.
at,
Yeah, as it
at
as it
some
gets
point
better.
they just
Yeah,
say,
right.
Nick, we don't need you anymore.
Well,
Yeah,
it's hopefully it won't come to that. The ChatGPT is basically just a big database, and you're always going to need creatives out there to do creative work. So, I think for the time being, you're safe, particularly at the level you're at.
possibly.
Nick, what do you want to do with the podcast in the future? What do you want a trader's life to look like 2 to 3 years out?
Yeah, interesting. You asked me that. More video, basically. Uh, so that would include what we're doing here. We're recording video. I have used it on some of the episodes, but the quality was very iffy and it kept going in and out and losing picture and what have you. But I want to interview more traders in and around London. I'm a filmmaker and my kids are into film as well, so I could actually put together a little crew and go out there
Nice,
and interview people. And so I think I will be adding that to the
nice.
podcast. So,
Maybe
sorry,
on
adding
location, go to their trading rooms, see
exactly.
what it looks
Yeah,
like. The
yeah,
people really love that. Traders particularly, um, you know, uh, up and coming traders, they love the motivation of seeing somebody's
yeah,
room, their desk, how they started,
yeah,
their
yeah,
story in a visual
yeah.
format. I think podcasting is certainly taking a turn towards video casts, anyways. There's only so many you could listen to without the imagery. So I definitely encourage
Yeah,
you to go that route. I'm
yeah,
excited
yeah.
to follow the story.
Cool. Yeah.
Have there been any standouts for you from people that you've interviewed that were just, um, you know, I know you had a harrowing story, but standouts from just a great inspirational story.
Yeah, I think Mark's stories have been inspirational. He has a few good stories of amazing comebacks. We had some awful setbacks, not just in his trading but personal life, and was very close to giving up. And then he looked at the chart and saw a pattern that he recognized from way back. And that's an interesting thing in itself. That a pattern could stay in his mind and then years later reappear on a chart, and he's just so confident that he's going to win on this, and he stacked so many trades in that was really high risk. I mean, just crazy in terms of risk management, but he was so convinced of his analysis, and he came out like 750K up,
Wow.
you know just from a week's trading. And the Nasdaq, when that started to come down, not last February, but the previous one. I think he made 1 million shorting Nasdaq.
Wow.
Just
Wow.
just the
Wonderful.
first. That was just the first couple of weeks. Not
Wow.
over 6 months or something. That was just a couple of
Hmm.
weeks. But he will go in with really really huge trade sizes. I mean, he's built his account up that he can do that. But he says, sometimes Nick, I think I'm crazy. What am I doing here? This is just absolute madness. Sometimes he'll just get so carried away with his he's just so convinced that this pattern will play out as he's seen it before, and according to his
Well,
analysis, and he
I
will,
would have to
yeah,
say that he's certainly in the minority there.
yeah.
We see a lot of traders who try to take those big swings, and most of
Mostly
the, I
you
mean,
lose, right? Yeah,
right, exactly.
yeah.
That's a risky proposition, so to
Yeah,
speak.
so it's a double-edged sword, that sort of story. There's the inspiration because you think, the courage and the vision and the conviction, and then and yet you don't have that guy's experience, and even if you had, your turn might be a complete and utter disaster. So you have to be really careful, but inspirational, yeah, and fun to hear, yeah.
Have you? I know he had a big loss. Have you had anybody who had some major setbacks? Flattened several accounts, only to persevere and come back and be a successful trader. What attributes did they have? Did they change their strategy? Kind of what was the story there?
Yeah, the people who've had really heavy losses, I think they've just had to lick their wounds and take time. And they all say that they come back doing small, really small trade sizes. And I think that's a really good, even if it's a loss of, say, I don't know, $500 in a week, and you're on a trade account of 5K, it's not huge. You've still got some left, but I think going back in on Monday or what have you, a slightly smaller trade size is a really good way just to calm down, not to get too excited, not to either way, whether that's sort of, oh, I've now got something better, or excited in that kind of anxious way. Because if you trade afraid or in fear, you're going to screw up as well. But I think,
Sure.
yeah, that coming back in with smaller trade sizes and also using demo. I mean, some of them will, admit to trading
Sure,
demo.
yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
I
I
use it. I mean,
I was just
on
going
a
to
regular
ask you,
basis.
what is your opinion on demo, and have you been able to form any opinions on demo through the people you've talked to?
Yeah, a lot of people will say, "Oh, demo's not the real thing, because it's not hitting your emotion." But I spent some time actually treating demo as if it were real, kind of kidding myself, and I think that helps. If you have a flippant attitude toward the alternative, i.e., demo, where it's just virtual money, I think, yeah, you're really not getting the best out of the exercise. You've got to treat it really. I really need to be careful here. You're not just, give it a go. This is my money here. If you kind of brainwash yourself into thinking that, and treat it with respect, if you like, I think you'll do so much better when you go back to the live. There won't be that
So
gap.
it's a useful exercise at that point.
Yeah, I think so. And you learn a lot,
Awesome.
and you learn a lot without actually having to risk. You know, every time you go live,
S-
you're risking.
Over time, I've talked to many successful traders, and a lot of the highly successful, balance-wise traders, kind of like we were talking about with Mark, have taken outsized positions where they're just stacking on huge. They have several really huge wins, compared to traders who are very disciplined and they're just base hitters. They're only looking for very small incremental increases over a long time. Give me a little insight to traders you've talked to on both ends of the spectrum, and where you feel they kind of what's the sweet spot, so to speak.
Yeah, I do think, at least from my perspective, I think it really is somewhere in between. But again, this is a rather personal view on it. I'm somewhat impulsive by nature, so for me to be the kind of very Mr. Calm, very almost kind of the typical engineer. I mean, being stereotypical here, no disrespect to engineers, but that kind of more methodical, just steady, no massive ups and downs as a personality, very precise, objective, and so on. I'm not like that. the creative type is sort of more impulsive and what have you. So I need to bring that down, but at the same time, you are who you are, and kind of just accept who you are. But I think that's important to just iron out those highs and lows. I don't know what else I could tell you from that, in the sense of,
Interesting.
if you're the impulsive type, you need to work on that. Bring that down a little bit. If you're the steady sort of more mechanical type, it could be that you could accelerate your progress by just occasionally, going for it. Um, the way Mark did.
Interesting.
So
Interesting. I
it's.
like it. I like
But
it.
in the
That's a
end,
great
you've got to
answer.
be who you are.
Right.
At the end of the day, it's all about enjoying it to a large degree, getting some satisfaction that you're doing well as you are, and yeah, that's
That's an
somehow really
interesting point. I've
important.
I've heard many traders who are successful refer to their boring. It's
Yeah,
very methodical, very boring.
yeah,
What do you find that? Do people refer to that before?
yeah. I've had traders who will say, they'll it's the 1 to 3 risk the reward, and you put your stop loss here and stop there. I'll only take breakouts, for example, and nothing else. That's it. That's my strategy. So okay, so that is kind of boring, isn't it? Because it's the same every time. They get it right or they get it wrong, and it's just sort of. And I see it. I get it. It makes sense because it's methodical, and if you can do it in a way that statistically shows that you're winning more than you're losing,
Right.
how can you knock it? But
Right, absolutely.
uh, you
Absolutely.
know,
Yeah. It's always interested me those types of strategies where people are a slightly over 50-50 and with good risk management, and long term they're profitable.
yeah,
I think if we could kind of bang into the skull of people who take those big huge swings, more people could probably be successful traders with a strategy like that. And that's where the
yeah,
risk management side, in my opinion, is so important.
yeah. And I think also that there is this other thing in the market that you get, the momentum. Maybe you got momentum or not, and if you see the chart charging up, and lots of you got a set of confluence that suggests, yeah, there's real reason to believe this is not just some huge crazy spike in volatility, then you think, right, well, yeah, maybe this time I go in double the size I normally go in, not just, oh, well, I always go in at X, well, maybe this time you
Right.
go in at X times two or whatever.
Make it condition dependent.
Yeah, exactly. And sort of to use that I suppose that's the discretionary element. And, some traders who want to be only mechanical will say, no, that's where you come unstuck. But I don't know.
Right. Interesting. Is there
Yeah.
anything that traders have told you at any particular times that they do not trade? Have you ever heard a consensus like we don't trade earnings, we don't trade the Fed? What kind of stood out in your mind as big red flags not to get involved with from successful traders?
Yeah. Uh, well, just to give you one example, the woman who's on my show on episode 81, I think it is next week, Kimberly, an American trader from New York, she trades only the U.S. Open, for example. And going back to what I was saying earlier, she says, once I've done that session and whatever I've made, I don't take that on till later in the day. So I'm really disciplined. That's what I do, and I just avoid that part of the day later on. She doesn't want to go near that. So she's very disciplined in that sense. And in a certain part of the day, she's realized I perform best when we get the open for the next, say, to midday. After that, I usually, my results are not so good. So that's a
Interesting.
a, a
So
day
it's about
thing.
self-awareness, about journaling. She knows where she's successful, knows where she's not, and she sticks with those times.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah,
Nice.
exactly. Yeah.
And Nick, do you have any up and coming guests on your show that you're excited to speak with? Give us a preview of who's coming on.
I wish I did actually. I don't. In fact, it's my day for finding the next guest. Yeah, my daughter does the mixing for me, and she was away for a little while, so it was a bit of
Nice.
a hiatus. But yeah, I need to find the next guest very soon. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I
But
wish you
anyway,
well with the
yeah,
guest. I wish you well with your trading, Nick. We really appreciate you coming on. You've shared a lot of great insights with us.
cool.
All the best with everything. And Have a great weekend.
Thanks for having me on. Cheers, Corey.
Talk to you soon.